The dust hadn't settled from their boots when Marcus Holloway heard the words that made his blood run cold. "We'll take the girl." 3 men sat their horses in his yard like vultures waiting for carrion. The leader, a thin man with silver teeth and dead eyes, pointed a gloved finger toward the porch where 8-year-old Sarah swept corn husks into neat piles. She hummed as she worked, unaware that her world was about to shatter. "She's not for sale," Marcus shouted, his hand instinctively moving toward the Winchester propped against the fence post. The silver-toothed man smiled. "Everything's for sale, Holloway. Question is the price." Sarah looked up at the sound of raised voices. Her dark eyes, so like her mother's, went wide as she took in the 3 strangers. Marcus felt his chest tighten. For 2 years it had been just him and Sarah on this hard-scrabble ranch outside Tombstone. 2 years since the fever took Maria, and Sarah had never known another home, another family. "Papa," Sarah called, her voice small and uncertain. The word hit him like a physical blow. Papa. She'd started calling him that 6 months ago, tentatively at first, then with the fierce certainty of a child who'd claimed her place in the world. Not once had he corrected her, though everyone in town knew the truth. Sarah wasn't his blood. "Get in the house, sweetheart," Marcus called back, his eyes never leaving the mounted men. The silver-toothed man chuckled. "Touching, but blood calls to blood, Holloway. The girl's got Comanche in her veins. Her grandmother wants her back." Marcus felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Maria had been half Comanche, but she'd never spoken of family still living. She'd told him they were all gone, scattered to the wind or buried in unmarked graves. "Even if that were true," Marcus said slowly, "Sarah stays here. This is her home. Home." The man's laugh was like breaking glass. "Look around, Holloway. This place is dying. Your cattle are skin and bones, your wells running dry, and winter's coming hard. What kind of life is that for a girl who could live like a princess?" The second rider, younger but with the same predatory smile, leaned forward in his saddle. "Her grandmother's got gold, Holloway, Spanish gold from the old days. The girl would want for nothing, and what does she want for now?" Marcus shot back, but his voice wavered despite himself. As if summoned by his doubt, Sarah appeared at his elbow. She'd ignored his order to go inside, stubborn as her mother had been. Her small hand slipped into his calloused palm. "Papa," she said again, louder this time. "Who are these men?" The silver-toothed man dismounted with fluid grace, his boots hitting the packed earth without a sound. Up close, Marcus could see the Comanche beadwork on his belt, the intricate patterns that spoke of a heritage Sarah barely understood. "My name is Joseph Crowfeather," the man said, his voice gentler now as he looked at Sarah. "I knew your mother when she was small, like you." Sarah pressed closer to Marcus's leg. "My mama's in heaven, yes, child, and she's watching over you." Crowfeather's eyes softened with what might have been genuine grief. "She would want you to know your people. Your grandmother, Running Fox, has waited years to see you. She's getting old, and her heart is heavy with longing." Marcus felt Sarah's grip tighten on his hand. The reasonable part of his mind whispered that maybe these men were telling the truth. Maybe Sarah did have family who loved her, who could give her things he never could. The ranch was failing, the drought had been brutal, and his small herd was barely surviving. Winter would be harsh, and his savings were nearly gone. But Sarah was his, not by blood, but by choice. By 2 years of midnight fevers and scraped knees and bedtime stories, by the way she'd cried for her mother and found comfort in his arms, by the way she called him Papa and meant it with her whole heart. "She's happy here," Marcus said finally. Crowfeather nodded as if he'd expected this answer. "Happiness is a luxury, Holloway. Survival isn't." He pulled a leather pouch from his saddlebag and let it drop to the ground. Gold coins spilled across the dirt, glinting in the afternoon sun. "Enough to save your ranch, enough to start over somewhere else." Sarah stared at the gold with wide eyes, but when she looked up at Marcus, he saw only fear. "I don't want to go," she whispered. The third rider, who'd remained silent until now, finally spoke. His voice was rough as sandpaper. "The Comanche don't ask twice, Holloway. Is that a threat?" Crowfeather held up a hand. "It's reality. The girl belongs with her people. If you won't see reason," he shrugged. "There are other ways." Marcus's blood chilled. These weren't just messengers from a grieving grandmother. They were dangerous men who'd come to take Sarah one way or another. The gold was just a courtesy, a chance to make it look like a sale instead of a kidnapping. "I need time to think," Marcus said. "Time's a luxury too." Crowfeather remounted his horse. "We'll be back at sunset. Have an answer ready." The three riders turned their horses and rode toward town, leaving Marcus and Sarah alone with the spilled gold and the weight of an impossible choice. As they disappeared into the heat shimmer, Marcus heard the distant sound of more hoofbeats, riders approaching from the opposite direction. The sheriff and two deputies crested the ridge, their badges catching the light like small suns. Sheriff Tom Bradley dismounted with the slow deliberation of a man carrying bad news. His weathered face was grim as he approached, his hand resting casually on his gun belt, a gesture that was anything but casual. "Marcus." The sheriff's nod was curt. "We need to talk." Sarah had already scooped up most of the scattered gold coins, her small hands working quickly while her eyes darted between the men. Marcus put a protective arm around her shoulders. "About what, Tom?" "About harboring a kidnapped child." The words hit like lightning. Marcus felt Sarah flinch beneath his arm, though she couldn't fully understand what was happening. "That's a lie," Marcus said evenly. Sheriff Bradley pulled a folded paper from his vest pocket. "Got a wire from Fort Sill this morning. Says a Comanche child named Sarah White Fox was taken from her grandmother's care 2 years ago. Says the man who took her was her mother's lover, a white rancher named Marcus Holloway. Maria brought Sarah to me willingly. She was dying, Tom, you know that. What I know is that 3 respected members of the Comanche Nation rode into town this morning with legal papers saying otherwise. They claim Maria stole the child from her rightful family and that you've been keeping her illegally ever since." Marcus felt the world tilting around him. The drought, the failing ranch, and now this. It was too much to fight all at once. But Sarah's hand in his was real and warm and trusting, and that was all that mattered. "Sarah," he said quietly, "go feed the chickens." "But Papa." "Go." She reluctantly walked toward the chicken coop, but Marcus knew she'd find a way to listen. She was too smart not to. "Tom, you've known me for 15 years. Do I look like a child stealer to you?" The sheriff's expression softened slightly. "What you look like doesn't matter, Marcus. It's what the law says. And right now the law says that girl belongs with her blood family." Deputy Miller, young and eager, stepped forward. "We're authorized to take her into protective custody pending a hearing. Like hell you are." The temperature in the yard seemed to drop 10 degrees. Marcus's hand moved instinctively toward his hip, though he wasn't wearing his gun belt. Sheriff Bradley noticed and tensed. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Marcus. The hearing will sort everything out. If you've got legal claim to the girl, prove it. And if I can't, then she goes back to her people." From the direction of town came the sound of approaching horses, many horses, moving fast. A cloud of dust rose on the horizon, and Marcus counted at least a dozen riders. His heart sank as he recognized Crowfeather's silver teeth glinting in the lead. "Looks like your friends are back early," Sheriff Bradley muttered. The riders thundered into the yard, surrounding the small group. Up close, Marcus could see they weren't all Comanche. Several were white men with hard faces and tied-down guns. Mercenaries, probably, men who fought for money, not justice. Crowfeather's smile was triumphant. "Sheriff, I see you got our message." "Your message?" Marcus felt sick. "Did you think we'd leave something this important to chance?" Crowfeather dismounted again, his movements predatory. "The law is on our side, Holloway. Always has been." Sarah appeared at the corner of the chicken coop, her face pale but determined. She clutched something in her small fist, her mother's silver locket, the one Marcus had given her on her birthday. "I won't go," she said, her voice small but clear. The standoff stretched like a held breath. 15 armed men faced Marcus and Sarah in their own yard, while the sheriff stood trapped between law and conscience. The air hummed with tension, thick enough to taste. Then Sarah did something that changed everything. She walked straight through the circle of horses to Crowfeather and held up her mother's locket. The silver caught the fading sunlight, and Marcus saw tears in her dark eyes. "My mama gave this to Papa to give to me," she said, her young voice carrying across the silence. "She said it would keep me safe. She said Papa would keep me safe." Crowfeather looked down at the girl with something like surprise. "Your mother wore that locket when she was your age. Did you know her when she was little?" "I did." For the first time since he'd arrived, Crowfeather's voice was gentle. "She was brave and stubborn, just like you." Sarah nodded solemnly. "Papa says I'm like her too. He tells me stories about her every night before bed. He says she loved me very much." "She did. Then why would she want me to leave Papa? He takes care of me when I'm sick. He braids my hair. He lets me name all the chickens, even though he says they're too stupid to remember their names anyway." A few of the riders shifted uncomfortably in their saddles. Even the mercenaries seemed affected by the girl's simple honesty. Crowfeather knelt to Sarah's eye level. "Your grandmother has been looking for you for 2 years, little one. She grieves for your mother and wants to hold the only piece of her daughter she has left. But what about Papa? If I leave, who will take care of him?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Marcus felt his throat tighten with emotion. This brave, beautiful child was worried about him while her own world crumbled around her. Sheriff Bradley cleared his throat. "Maybe we should take a step back here. Marcus, you got any proof that Maria gave you guardianship of the girl? She was dying, Tom. We didn't exactly have time for paperwork, but there might have been witnesses, someone who saw. I saw. The voice came from the road. Dr. Henry Morrison approached on his ancient mare, his medical bag bouncing against his hip. The old doctor had delivered half the babies in the territory and buried just as many. His word carried weight. I was there when Maria died, Dr. Morrison continued as he dismounted. She made me promise to witness her final wishes. Crow Feather stood, his hand moving to his gun. What wishes? That Marcus would raise Sarah as his own daughter, that the child would choose her own path when she came of age. The doctor pulled a folded paper from his bag. I wrote it all down, legal as any will. The paper looked official enough, complete with the doctor's flowing signature and a pressed seal. Marcus had never seen it before, but he wasn't about to question Providence. Crow Feather's face darkened. That changes nothing. Blood calls to blood. Maybe, Dr. Morrison said quietly, but love calls louder. Sarah looked between the two groups of men, her small hands still clutching her mother's locket. The setting sun painted everything in shades of gold and crimson, and in that light she looked older than her 8 years, wise in the way children become when they've faced loss too early. I want to meet my grandmother, she said finally. Marcus felt his heart crack. Despite everything, she was curious about her blood family. How could he deny her that? But I want Papa to come with me. Crow Feather shook his head. That's not possible. Then I won't go. Sarah's chin lifted with stubborn determination. Papa is my family too. If grandmother loves me, she'll want to meet him. The old ways don't work like that, child. Then maybe the old ways are wrong. The words came from one of the Comanche riders, an elderly man whose weathered face spoke of decades under the open sky. He dismounted slowly, his movements careful but dignified. I am Thomas Crow Wing, he said. Running Fox is my sister. Crow Feather spun toward him. Uncle, you can't mean. I mean exactly what I said. The old man's voice carried quiet authority. My sister has grieved for 2 years, yes, but grief does not give us the right to steal a child from the only father she's ever known. He approached Sarah with the same careful respect he might show a wild bird. Your grandmother sent me to watch, little one, to see if the stories about you were true. What stories? That you were loved, that you were safe, that you were happy. Thomas Crow Wing smiled. I can see that all these things are true. Crow Feather's hand moved to his gun, but his uncle's sharp look stopped him. There is another way, Thomas continued, an old way that honors both families. He turned to Marcus. Would you bring the child to visit her grandmother? Not to give her up, but to let an old woman see her granddaughter's face. Marcus looked down at Sarah, who nodded eagerly. I'd like that, Papa. Then it's settled. Thomas Crow Wing pulled a small leather pouch from his belt and pressed it into Sarah's hands. From your grandmother, a gift to welcome you, not to buy you. Inside the pouch was a pair of moccasins, tiny and perfect, decorated with the same intricate beadwork as Crow Feather's belt. Sarah slipped them on immediately, delighted by their soft leather comfort. Sheriff Bradley holstered his gun with visible relief. Sounds like we've got ourselves an understanding then. Crow Feather looked like he wanted to protest, but his uncle's authority was absolute. One by one the riders turned their horses and headed back toward town, leaving only Thomas Crow Wing behind. We will expect you within the month, he told Marcus. Come with gifts, as is proper. Come as family. As the dust settled and the old Comanche rode away, Sarah slipped her hand back into Marcus's. The gold coins lay forgotten in the dirt, no longer needed. Papa, yes, sweetheart? Do you think Mama would be proud of us? Marcus looked up at the first stars appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere among them, he imagined Maria watching over the daughter she'd entrusted to his care, and the family she'd helped bring together across the divide of two worlds. I think she'd be very proud. Years later, when Sarah was grown and had children of her own, she would remember this day as the moment she learned that family wasn't just about blood. It was about choice, and love, and the courage to build bridges where others saw only walls. But that evening, as Marcus tucked her into bed and told her stories about her mother, all she knew was that she was safe, she was loved, and she was home. The moccasins sat carefully placed beside her bed, a promise of adventures yet to come, and a grandmother's love waiting to be discovered. Outside, the desert wind whispered through the sage, carrying with it the scent of rain and the promise of better days ahead.